English and French. I did a year in Paris as a French major. I did my master's at Yale University in African American Studies, and then I did my PhD in American Studies at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. At the same time that I was getting my doctorate, I also taught at Howard University. I taught there for about 7 years. And then I started teaching at a school called Hofstra University, which is in New York, in the suburbs of New York. And after 7 years, about 6 or 7 years there, I was asked to join the faculty at the Juilliard School. And I've been there, as I said, 17, almost 18 years. At Juilliard, I teach a variety of classes. We can talk more about that. But I can tell you a little bit about my specialties first. So I'm a person who writes about American culture and American literature, more specifically African-American literature. I also do a little bit of writing about drama. That came from teaching at Juilliard. So I write about the playwright Lynn Nottage. And I spend a lot of my time writing and presenting on African-American and American literature for encyclopedias and journals and things like that, conferences all over the world, actually. At Juilliard, we have what we call a core curriculum. So students all take, I would say there are 3 courses that all students take. And so one is an ethics course, one is a class that's on society, politics, and culture, and another one's on this art and aesthetics. And so those 3 classes are required of all Juilliard students. So I teach those classes as well as my specialty in American literature. So today, or last week, I taught Ernest Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises, the week before, The Great Gatsby, next week, Nella Larsen's Quicksand. So I do a lot of sort of what we call the canon, like the major works of the American literary canon. I think that's where I should leave it for the moment. So that's what I do. That's who I am. And so next question, or what's up next thing?
All right. So you mentioned that you are the chair of the liberal arts department.
Yes.
What exactly does the chair do?
Well, that's new. I just started being the chair in July, so I got to inherit a department in the middle of a pandemic, which is a whole thing. But so Juilliard has 3 major divisions: drama, dance, and music. Music being the biggest sort of area of the school. And liberal arts, is our department. Let's say that a performing arts education has to have what they call a gen ed component, a general education component. And so liberal arts is what satisfies that requirement for students. In the liberal arts department, there are about 13 or 14 of us, and we teach the core classes, so those 3 classes that I mentioned, as well as a variety of electives in various specialties. We also teach foreign language and writing. So we're almost like a mini liberal arts college in the corner of the building. Okay? And students must take, must take 24 liberal arts credits in order to get a bachelor's degree. You can go to a performing arts college and not get a bachelor's degree, right? You don't take the liberal arts courses. But I always think if you're going to spend all that money on education, you should probably get a bachelor's degree, right? So instead of what they call an artist diploma. So most students who come to Juilliard get either a bachelor's of fine arts or a bachelor's of music, right? So the drama and dance students get a bachelor's of fine arts, and the music students get a bachelor's of music. So we are interdisciplinary. We're one of the only places where students in all the divisions come together. If you're a dancer, you might collaborate with a musician, you might do something with an actor, but it's in the liberal arts classes where you get to meet and talk about issues with all of your classmates across the disciplines, across what we call the divisions. So the liberal arts department serves an academic function for a student's education, but it also serves, I think, a social function as well. A support, it helps build a sort of a family feeling and a support mechanism across the divisions.
Okay, I got it. Um, you know, I have kind of a list of questions for you,
Mhm.
Dr. Barron, but uh, I recognize this one question might seem like it's coming a little bit out
Mhm.
of nowhere, but let
Okay.
me just slip this in and ask it anyway
Sure.
because I'm so curious, and I think
Uh-huh.
some other people uh,
Mhm.
may share my curiosity here.
Mhm.
Can you tell us who are or have been some of your famous
Okay. Yeah.
students?
Yes. So Juilliard's had famous students forever, right?
Yes.
Um, and I know, so when I was in the building, I knew Danielle Brooks, who plays Tasty on Orange is the New Black. I never taught her. Lovely girl, lovely woman now. And I've seen various people throughout the through my life at Juilliard. I have taught Pippa Sue, who is in Hamilton on Broadway. She plays Alexander Hamilton's wife in the Broadway show. I've taught Finn Whitrock, who is an actor who many people know. He's been in anything, like he's a great character actor. I've taught
Hmm.
one of the students that I've taught that everyone would know would be John Batiste, who is the musician on the Stephen Colbert Show, and I
Hmm.
taught many of his bandmates.
Hmm.
Um, there are lots of dancers like Nigel Campbell and um, you're in Texas, right? So
Yeah,
Amber
yeah.
Pitkins and
Actually, I think Amber even signed up for the webinar. She may even be here. You
Amber
never know.
and Allie Johnson. So
Yes.
there are lots of people who are famous. Nicole Bahari was in my class for a minute. She didn't like me, and
Oh,
so over the years there have been a lot of students who've become quite famous, right? And sometimes you see them on television, and you're like, wow, Amari Cheatham, who's the first face that you see in Django Unchained, right?
yeah.
Laura Lee Moser. So there are people who I've taught. And I don't have much to do with their art, so I know them through their classroom, a different side of them. And I have to
Right.
say that I love all of the students that I've taught. I mean, they really are wonderful people, and it's really lovely to see them as they're growing into who they are in the
Hmm.
performing in their performance life. So it's a lovely opportunity to see them early, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you
But
for indulging.
oh,
What's
that's
that?
okay. You were asking me about what the chair does, and so I think I didn't finish. Because I
Okay.
stopped and then I remembered that I didn't answer the question, which is that I think the chair in liberal arts is really almost like a liaison between the academic side of things and the performing arts side of Juilliard. We're not, we're in a way, our job is not to, so I'm very proud of my students that I've taught who are famous, but that's not my job. Like my job at Juilliard is to educate my students just like I'd educate a student anywhere else, right?
Hmm.
And it's important, and I have nothing to do with their talent or their expertise. Sometimes I get to be supportive of things that they do, or I get to um, you know, uh, help nourish who they are as a person, but the art is not my field. But so we're almost like allies, right? Or the people who help students develop the the well-rounded education that they need to go out into the world as artists,
Yes.
right? So we help them. I mean, our students read a variety of works across disciplines. They read Aristotle, and they read Frederick Douglass, and they read Foucault, and they read all kinds of things that people don't think of when you think of an artist, right? I
Right.
have been to academic conferences where I'm presenting on my own material, and a person will say, "You teach at Juilliard? Do you teach opera?" And I'll say, "No, don't teach opera. I teach English." And they'll say, "But it's a performing arts school. So you must teach opera." And I'm like, "No, I know what I teach. I teach I teach English. I teach literature." And it's always sort of interesting to hear how people don't think of artists as thinking people who who can read great books or who can read and make decisions about literature and history and philosophy. So I think my liberal arts is about making sure our students are well-rounded. And I
Hmm.
think as the chair of liberal arts, my job is to help facilitate that by being an advocate for my department, by working with the other divisions to make sure that our students are well served, to help we also to sort of make sure that the curriculum that we teach is the right curriculum for our students, because they take fewer classes than at, like, let's say, a traditional liberal arts college or a traditional school. So we have to be very selective in what we teach, right? So everything weighs a little bit more. It's not like you can take a course and then it's like one course a semester for 4 years, right? So you have to be very concerned about getting it all in, or thinking about what you think your students need.
So just actually a point of clarification. You said one course. So is it one liberal arts course per
One liberal arts
semester?
course per semester for 4 years, right?
Okay.
If you're a drama student, they double up at some point so that you don't take any in your last year. Drama students at Juilliard are like, in the 4th year, it's like they become almost like their own sort of repertory company. So they
Hmm.
don't take any classes in their senior year.
Hmm.
So they double up early. But yes, it averages one course each semester for 4 years.
Interesting. You know,
So there are
your
no majors, there are no majors, excuse me, there are no majors, there are
Mhm.
no minors. So it's really like a person who's a traditional academic who wants all their students to be like an English major, that
Yeah.
won't happen. Right. But there's a
Your
certain freedom in that.
Yes. No, no, your comments are sort of touching on a question that I have about, you know, the case of a high school student who is considering college,
Hmm.
and that student is interested in performing arts, and that student maybe is trying to decide whether or not he or she wants to go to a traditional liberal
Hmm.
arts school, um, versus a performing arts school that
Hmm.
includes a liberal arts
Hmm.
education.
Right.
How can you put yourself sort of self in the mind of that high school student and sort of walk me and us, the audience, through how one might make that distinction,
Hmm.
uh, one going in one direction versus another?
Yeah. Um, so I would say that one of the things that I notice about liberal arts, about Juilliard students, is that they come in knowing what they want to do. So my thinking about this is, if you know that you want to play the bassoon with your whole heart and soul, and the only thing you want to do is play the bassoon, you know that that is your life's work. You should come to Juilliard, right? But
Right.
if you're like, I could play the bassoon, but I might want to be a lawyer and I don't know, then maybe it's better to go to a liberal arts college with a good bassoon program, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
it has happened that there are students who come to Juilliard and after 4 years say, you know what, I want to go to law school, or you know what, I want to go to grad school. That happens, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But the vast majority of students really do know that they want to do their art, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. So for them, I think liberal arts, it's a different approach to liberal arts. So if you're, it's almost like being pre-med or something. Like you have to, people who are pre-med know they're pre-med from the moment they walk in college, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can decide your senior year that you want to be pre-med, but generally speaking, that's not going to be an easy road for you, right?
Right.
It's the same
Sure.
thing, right? So it's almost like when you are someone who's made that decision,
Mm-hmm.
it's that's the where you should go. Now there are students who have parents who are in music or parents who are actors, and it's like the family business. And you find, and as and in any discipline, right,
Mm-hmm.
that people feel like they're pressured to come because of some preconceived notion or some family expectation. That's another story. Like that's something where you have to go, well, maybe that person shouldn't be there, or maybe they should have picked something different. But if a student himself themselves feel like they need to be in that space,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing more beautiful than that. I think the thing about Juilliard is it helps you create a it's not just your music. These days there are classes on entrepreneurship, there are classes on how to make a career. So if you're a dancer, you're going to take classes in choreography, you're going to be exposed to the whole life cycle of a dancer in a way that's less rigid than it was before, so that people are looking at, like, it's not just what you can leave and you can go dance in Europe for 5 years and come back and then not know what you're going to do. Now there's a kind of way in which the dance division, under the brilliant leadership of Alicia Graf Mack, you know, there's a consideration of what it means to be a dancer over a lifetime. And one of the things that's important in that lifetime is being able to participate in the world and participate in, you know, larger discussions about what's happening in the world, right? How do you make that art? What's going to help you develop into a thinking person who can create art? Right? So it's not just rigidly about, can you do this step and can you do this thing or do you dance nicely? It's about, what does it take to make the whole person who's the artist? And I think that's where we have a role to play. We are not the only people who have a role. I mean, in each of the divisions, there are lovely people who really work hard to make sure their students are equipped with all the skills that they need to have a career in the arts. We are just one part of that toolbox. So if it's a whole bunch of tools, we're just one, right? Liberal arts gives you one part. It's one dimension of what you need to be a whole person, a whole artist, right?
Right. Got it. Okay.
I hope I'm being clear.
No, you're being very clear.
Okay.
How can a student optimize or get the most out of the experience of attending a performing arts college? Like, once you're there, how do you make the most of it?
Well, I mean, I would say it's the same. I don't, you know, in terms of the art part, I think I'll say it this way. I think any student at any college should be totally present, right? You only get one, you know, you get one life and you have to make the most of it. And one of the things that is hard is to sort of make the most of the experience while you're there, right? Like, there are always other things to consider. How are you going to pay for your school education? Where are you going to live? You know, all those kinds of things. But insofar as you can kind of spend your energy on the thing in front of you, I think that's the advice that I would give. Like, I know that there are students who have a lot going on in their family lives, or a lot going on, but some of them are able to come to class and they really enjoy it, right? They take away things. Some of them, it doesn't hit them till later, but being open to the experience, being organized, I think, is a big deal. Like, having a strategy for doing your work, is important. That is really important. Like, having some kind of organizational structure, or what we call executive skills, in order to sort of organize how to get the work done, right? That's super important. I remember it, so this is going to go back to our school days, but I remember, Stan, when we were in college, I had some friends who were always complaining that they had no work, they had so much work, and they hadn't taken a shower, and it was exam week, and there was all this kind of stuff to do. And I was in the lab with some friends at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I thought to myself, I'd rather be sleeping. So I went to bed, and the next morning I made a list that I called Get the Stuff Done, GTSD. And I made a list of everything I needed to do. And that was my only focus for the last, I don't know, 2 weeks of the semester. And I always tell my students, the freshman students, because a lot of freshmen don't know things about, like, how to read a syllabus. You know, if you're the first generation college, there are lots of things that you don't know, right? And there are a lot of people who don't tell you. So I always sort of try to tell my students in a way that's not patronizing, like, how to help. I try to give them little nudges on how to organize. And I always say, like, maybe it's around this time of the semester, I'll say, like, okay, take a moment, figure out what you need to get done, right? What do you have to get done, right? It's important that you do the reading, but what else are you going to do? Like, how are you going to get all these things done, especially if you're behind, right? So I
Right.
think, and some students really know how to do school. They
Yeah.
know how to organize themselves to do school. And some are just like, I enjoy the class. I've had students who've read every book, come to
Hmm.
class, talked about stuff, and not written a paper. I was like, dude, you're gonna fail. Like they don't somehow there's some kind of disconnect. I also have students who are afraid to write. Maybe they have a learning disability. I've had that. Maybe they have some kind of issue and they're ashamed, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So they work around it and they think that they're ashamed to say it. But sometimes it's better just to get the help, right?
Right.
So, I come from Caribbean parents. We're proud people. I don't think my parents would have. I didn't have a learning disability, or so I don't know. If I did, I wouldn't have known, because they would have just, just get it done, that kind of thing. But what you don't realize is there are all kinds of accommodations for kids who have disabilities, right?
Hmm.
And there are all kinds of things that the school can do, any school can do, to help students who have those, but oftentimes students don't know that that's the
Hmm.
case.
Hmm.
So they're struggling or in denial or afraid or ashamed. And at the end of the day, it's just one thing to deal with, right?
Right.
It's one thing to
Right.
kind of get through, right? And the worst case scenario is you'll fail. If you're going to fail anyway, the worst case scenario is that you'll fail, right? So
Right.
and failing isn't bad. That's something that I think when I was thinking about this conversation that we were having, I was thinking about the thing that um, I always think about when I think about my own kids, is I always think it's good to fail. It's good to fail early when the
Hmm.
risk is low, like when not everything is on the line. That's
Right.
something that I see in college students a lot. Like the students who have parents, and this is not just Juilliard, this is anywhere I've ever taught. The students who have parents who micromanage their kids, right?
Hmm.
And are pushing them and pushing them. Sometimes when the kids get to college, they
Yes.
don't know what to do, right? I
Right.
had a mommy
Hmm.
who wanted to speak to me. Her
Right.
son had failed. And, college professors do not speak to parents. There's something called FERPA. So FERPA
Right.
means that I don't have to talk to parents. I'm like, yay, I don't have to talk to this person. Woo! And the student signed away his rights. So basically, I would have to talk to the mother.
Right.
And I was just not happy about that. So finally, I emailed the student and I said, look, you and I both know why you failed, but let's just go over this in this email. You didn't come to class, you didn't hand in any work, you didn't do, like all these things, all these
Right.
things. And then I said, please show this to your mother, right? Because I'm not
Right.
talking to her. Okay.
Right. Right.
Um, but I thought to myself, I hate to say it like this because I'm a parent, that's an overbearing parent. So when she wasn't in control, her son didn't know what to do.
Hmm.
And I think students have to know what it feels like to fail so that
Hmm.
they know that they have some control over the failure, right?
Hmm.
So this is what happened. I can fix that. And that kind of empowerment helps students in college. I'm not saying to like tell people to fail. I'm just saying that, you know, students need to see the relationship between their work and the grade,
Hmm.
right? And that
Right.
helps them figure out. Like as a parent, I really have a hard time, if one of my kids doesn't get the grade they're supposed to get, or I want them to get, I've
Right.
emailed the teacher and I've said, "Oh, I don't want to be that micromanager mommy, but if you could tell me what I could do to help my son or help my daughter, I would appreciate it." Right? But
Mhm.
I'm never going to be that mom who's like in it and pushing and pushing and pushing, because at the end of the day, the kid has to be motivated to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I love your points. I teach a study skills class, and I talk
Okay.
about these things to students. And sometimes I think students and parents underestimate the value and the importance
Mhm,
of developing these executive functioning skills and
mhm,
basically these study skills. And just really, that can be, in my opinion,
mhm,
a huge factor in terms of a student's success. And of course, you did mention writing, and I happen to be in the writing business, but we won't have to, we don't have to
So am
go.
I. I teach writing all the time, so we can
Right.
talk about.
Okay. Right. Well, two things then. One, I'd love to even hear your thoughts about the value and importance of writing in college. And then secondly, you mentioned when you were talking the,
Mhm,
a situation if a student is, let's say, starting college,
mhm.
needs an accommodation, what does that student do if the student doesn't even know who to talk to? And so can you
Okay.
address those 2 points?
Yes. So a student going into college with an IEP, usually every school usually has a disability officer, right? Or some kind of
Yes.
equity officer. So if you have an IEP, you can go in and give it to to that particular person.
Right.
If you believe that you have some kind of disability or challenge, it's a little bit harder because schools vary, but getting tested is very expensive. So it's probably best to be tested before you start college, even if it's just to bring the paper in.
Hmm.
But there's usually a person, like our person, Dan Stokes, is great, right? So every year, well, this year and every year to come, he will be the first. This year he was the first guest that I invited into our faculty meeting,
Okay.
because especially when you're teaching online, which is what this is new to everybody because of the situation that we're in. um, I wanted my colleagues to have someone to talk to about the challenges that they would have that are exacerbated by being online, right? But
Right.
just hearing him talk and about challenges, so like if you have a blind student, what do you do? If you have a student who's deaf on the left side, what do you do? There are all these things that are super important, and we don't really think about them. And so he was the person who explained them to us. And I think there's always somebody there who can help, right?
Okay. Yes.
But you have to know that person's there, and you have to be willing to go to that person, right?
Right.
When I was in college, I took a class with James Baldwin, when he was teaching in the Pioneer Valley, the famous writer, the whole bit. And we
Right.
had a writing counselor, Susan Snively. And I remember being so intimidated by the prospect of writing for James Baldwin that I went to Susan Snively at least twice a week for 2 months, right? And I
Uh-huh.
had no disability. I just wanted someone to help me, because I didn't want this man. I thought that James Baldwin would read my essay and laugh at me, right? So, because I was
Right.
so afraid of it, right?
Right.
Um, and I think there are lots of places for student support. I think students tend to feel like there's a value judgment associated with the support. So
Mm.
oftentimes students won't go to tutoring if there's tutoring available. They
Hmm.
won't go to the disability person. But at the end of the day, it becomes the thing, it gets in the way of the student growing, right?
Right.
So, but so it's almost like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, like, oh, I'm ashamed to go. Someone will think I'm stupid, but then at the end of the day, you're not doing well, right? And you're
Right.
confirming that fear. So it's important to use the resources that are there. When you get to college, your school loan repayment will not be lowered if you did not go to the writing center. It will not be lower if you didn't get help. It will be the same. And the
Right.
students who succeed are the students who are the ones who are working and using all the tools using all the things that they have access to. I
Hmm.
have had cases where I've had students who are on the spectrum. I have students who are ESL students. I'll just tell a little story. I teach a writing seminar course, which is a first year writing class.
Okay.
And I often have students who are, Juilliard is about a third international,
Okay.
right? So we have lots of students who English is not their first language. And
Hmm.
so I had a student who was, I don't want to talk about specific students, but I've had students who are ESL students
Hmm.
who go to a writing seminar, and maybe their English is not perfect, right?
Right.
But I remember there was an occasion where I had a student who was American,
Hmm.
and he saw that a student who was an ESL student get a higher grade than him. And
Okay.
he was incensed and angry and went to the dean and complained that
Uh-huh.
that I clearly had a grudge against him because the ESL student got a higher grade than him. And it was like, but the ESL student had worked on the paper, right? Had
Hmm.
gone to tutoring. right? Had had me before, so the student had an advantage because he knew what I wanted in a paper and had been working with me, but had used the resources available, right?
Right.
So it's sort of interesting. So if you use the things that you have access to, you will do well, even if you start from behind, right?
Right.
That constant work, that discipline is really important. I think the
Yes.
one thing that Juilliard students really have a lot of is discipline, right? Because to get to Juilliard, to get to, what is ostensibly the most famous performing arts college in the world, right? That is hard enough, right? So you have to have discipline. I am amazed when I hear my students say, well, I practice piano 6 hours a day. And I'm like, right? They're kids
Right.
who are homeschooled. They're kids who choose to be homeschooled so they can practice their instrument. That's what I said that's what I meant when I said, if this is your life's passion, right? Then you need to come to Juilliard, right? They're kids whose parents have bought homes in New York, like little apartments in New York, so their students could do their kids could do the high school programs. That is a real thing, right?
Right.
And so, so, but so the discipline's there, but some people feel like the discipline doesn't extend to the academic side, right? So it's like there's an anxiety about that, or it should be easy because I'm an artist. And so I shouldn't have to work at academic stuff. And we're like, no, you can be an artist who does both. You can do both.
Right.
You can be smart in book smart and you can be a performing artist. And it's all good. So, right?
Right.
So the courses that our students take are not some sort of like, easy courses. They are rigorous academic courses.
And the writing piece, just a minute
Yes.
on that.
Yes, of course. The writing class, so the students have a placement exam, and they are placed, either they are exempt from like what we would like the equivalent of an English 101 kind of class.
Right.
So some students are exempt from it and some students take it. So it's called writing seminar. And because you cannot take the courses that we teach, those 3 semesters, those core classes are really writing intensive. If you can't write at least a 5-paragraph essay, I mean, like, it's more than that in college, right?
Right.
But if you haven't mastered that, it's a time our class is sort of, we will place you according to your skill set. And writing seminar, our writing classes expect that students can do analysis, college level analysis. We have a really extensive writing center with lots of tutors, and a beautiful space. And students can be tutored by faculty members and students who are trained by faculty members. And so the first year writing course is pretty intensive. I mean, like when I teach writing seminar, I usually spend one semester really sort of having our students read really difficult pieces of literature and sort of writing about it. So, David Foster Wallace and Anthony Appia, and then they move on to doing more research-related material. We're actually in the process of rethinking it and deciding whether or not we want our students to take, if we want all students to take some kind of required writing class or not, but we're thinking about it. Like, so we're always, well, actually, I should say, in liberal arts, we're always thinking about whether we should adjust the curriculum, how much writing is necessary. And for us, we also emphasize public speaking so that we connect the writing to public speaking. So students at Juilliard have to speak at their senior recital. So before they graduate, they have to do a talk about their work and the like they have to talk in their concert, which is a lovely thing to hear them sort of talk about the work and their relationship to it. So we see the two as connected.
Right.
So the writing seminar, so students might have to do like a think, pair, share, where they have to think about something and they pair with someone and talk about it and then share, but I might make them do a public speaking activity in addition to that.
Okay. Can you well, let me take a step back. So we have a number of parents and students that are on our webinar today, and some of the students are in middle school, some are in high school. Can you share or rather the question is, how can parents of middle school students and high school students help their student prepare for college in general and a
Mhm.
performing arts college in particular? So
Okay.
now I'm really asking to talk to the parents, how, you're
Mhm.
talking to parents and you're offering them advice.
Mhm.
How can they help their students, their middle school students and their high school students prepare?
I'm the mother of two middle school kids, so I'm still figuring out some of that for middle
Okay.
school. I
Hmm.
think, I think that high school has to be about getting your children into the most challenging courses and getting them used to doing rigorous work. Um, and I know that, GPAs matter and honors courses matter, but I
Hmm.
think doing the best that you can for making sure that your child takes the most rigorous courses that the student can take is important. I think emphasizing discipline is really important, like self-discipline. My brother always says that success is based on the ability to delay gratification,
Hmm.
and I really do believe that's true. Like, I won't do this now because I want this other thing later, right?
Hmm.
And so that I think that part is important. That but that but that students can do it themselves.
Hmm.
I think this is the hard part, right? Because I think that for me, it's about motivation, but motivation that's based on um, a student wanting to do well. And I think that's hard, right? Like, as a mother of twins who are 12, I can say, like, I have bribed a person. Like, I have promised a basketball hoop in my yard if I get high honors this year. So I'm not above it, all right?
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
So
Right.
sometimes the parents just gotta force a kid to do what the kid needs to do. But
Right.
the goal, I think, is to make sure that a child is motivated from within, right? I
Yes.
know my kids love school. I think that's
Hmm.
important. I
Hmm.
think, but it's the well-rounded kid. I'm it's that's a hard one because I always, in my mommy group, we talk
Right.
about, so my kids are in 6th grade, going to 7th grade. And in my town, there's a little implicit bias in some of the classes in the public school. And a lot of
Hmm.
parents take their kids out and put them in private school. And I've been thinking a lot about that. And I've been thinking, and so parents talk about how much money do I need to pay to go send my kid to private school, and we go back and forth on it. And I kind of realized that my kids will be okay, right? Like, they'll be okay because they like school, they're motivated. Yes, we have to push a little bit, but they have support. I think that's really
Hmm.
important, right? That
Hmm.
they kind of feel like they're supported and that they know that things will turn out, so they're not afraid to try different things. Again, not afraid to fail, and that they
Hmm.
feel confident about their future. I think that's important. Like, there are people who, for some of us, there's a lot riding on education, right?
Yes.
There's a
Yes.
lot riding on where we go to school. And for other people, it doesn't seem like there's a lot riding on it. They feel like they're going to be fine no matter what, right? And I'm
Hmm.
not always sure what the balance is. Is it,
Hmm.
you know, uh, spending my retirement fund to put my kids in private school, or is it letting them be happy in the public school where they are and just letting and pushing them, just nudging them along, right? Like, I
Right.
don't know what the best way is.
Yeah.
Um, so I think for parents, it's really a question of trusting your gut, like
Yes.
knowing your kid.
Hmm.
Um, if your kid likes school and has good study habits, that's great, right? Maybe there are kids that who are just not going to be, who are not interested in that academic life, like in that kind of thing, but they might be interested in a well-rounded life, and there might be something to letting them do those things. Like, I'm not actually sure. The kids who apply to Juilliard tend to be people who know that they want to do what they want to do. So
Right.
I can't tell you how they get there because they come to me that way, right? The kids who
Hmm.
go to schools like Amherst, like we went to,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain kind of kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
not the parent, it's the kid. It's the something about, the some of it's the community and the company they keep. Some of
Right.
it is how well they do in school, but I don't actually know the answer to that. What I know is that, at least in if my kid, if my son or daughter wants to go to a state school because they have some plan and they have some idea of why they want to go there, I
Yes.
have to honor that and see why does they want to go there. Like, periodically I hear, someone in our family does relatively well. Like my niece just graduated from med school. She's going to Yale for her residency. Now my daughter's talking about Yale. But, 5 weeks ago, maybe somebody was going to community college and she's like, oh, maybe I'll go there. Like, I don't, I mean, I think I can say you have to go here and there's pressure to go there, but I'm actually more interested in seeing what they decide. I think that parents have to um, figure out why they're interested in their kids going to a particular place, right?
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I live in Westchester, New York. There's a lot of, oh, my kid goes to Harvard and this person goes here. And there's a lot of that. And since I grew up in the town where I live now, I
Mm-hmm.
remember it from, being a kid. Like I know um, that some of my interest in going to Amherst was competitive because I was a competitive kid in that way, right?
Right. Right.
But I have friends who've done just as well as I have who've gone to other schools, right? So
Right.
I don't really know the answer to that. I think you just have to. I think parents have to trust their gut, do the
Mm-hmm.
best that they can, not beat themselves up if some other kid has something that your kid doesn't have. I
Mm-hmm.
think if you're interested in the arts, those summer intensives are important. So just so the art parents will know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If your kid is in the arts and there's summer intensives and things like that, if you
Mm-hmm.
can afford them, send your kid to those things. If they're genuinely interested, they're a lot of money, so send
Mm-hmm.
those. If your kids are interested in going to, I mean, okay, so let me just say this. When my stepsons were in Catholic school in where we lived before, um, I felt like the older one was super smart and not particularly exposed. So it
Okay.
wasn't about like he had to go to a particular school, right? But my husband and I decided that we would send him to Brown for a summer program because he
Okay.
wasn't confident. We
Mm-hmm.
sent him to Brown. He was mad. He didn't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we came and picked him up, he was like socially awkward. And when he
Mm-hmm.
came, when we picked him up, he was sitting in a room filled with girls, and he was like, "Oh, mom, dad, I'm here." Right. So something about that summer experience showed him that he was capable of competing with these other
Yes.
kids, that he was as smart as it, and that was important to me, the confidence, right?
Yes.
Um, I don't, and so if you can expose your children to things, it's important,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then the decisions come naturally, I think, like exposing them, challenging them, but not pushing them narrowly in a direction, and also
Mm-hmm.
sort of knowing what your kid is capable of, or sort of knowing what will work and what won't work. So for my oldest son, he went to Brown, right? My
Mm-hmm.
younger stepson, oh my goodness, if you told him to go to Brown for a summer class, he would have, like on Shakespeare, like the older one did, he would have lost his mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we sent him to France. I mean, it's great. Grandparents are great. So this is the only reason I could afford it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we sent him to Paris for a photography class for a semester, and he loved it.
Okay.
He loved it. And it really helped him come into his own. So for my stepsons, yes, I mean, access to things, figuring out, like there are things that you can do well, figuring out what those things are, all those things were important.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like some kind of menu or agenda for how to do it, I don't know what those things are. I think you just have to trust your gut. And let me just say, as a step parent, I didn't know that those things would work, right?
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
thought, okay, I thought, wouldn't it be nice if they could see this particular thing or do something different? And that was what motivated me, right? But I'm lucky that it worked. It could have,
Mm-hmm.
as we said, it could have gone left very easily. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that helps, but I don't know if it's reassuring to have a college professor say she doesn't know, but I don't know.
No, I appreciate your candor and honesty about this, and I think your answer was terrific and very genuine.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Something that you touched on, you're sort of speaking, I would say, to the parents of students who attend performing arts schools, and so I want to probe a moment on that. You mentioned, summer intensive. So, for example, here in Dallas, where I'm currently at, we have the Booker T. Washington
Sends a lot
School.
of students to Juilliard, yes.
Yeah, and there's another school where in Houston, I think it's the Kinder, I don't know, I can't remember it right now, but another very famous sort of performing arts high school. So really the question is, if you're attending a performing arts high school, can you offer any advice, thoughts for those students who are at a performing arts school in terms of courses that they should take or shouldn't take, or doing things like summer intensives? Any sort of words of wisdom that you can share to that segment of student?
Okay, so in terms of students who are in performing arts high schools, I think that there are opportunities that that are offered to them. I would say take every opportunity to dance, to sing, to do your art. And sometimes even if it's not a perfect fit, so if it's a collaboration, let's say with a musician and you're a dancer, do it, right? Like don't shy away from trying something new and doing different things, because that's what performing arts colleges make you do. At least that's what Juilliard makes you do. In terms of your classwork, don't decide that that the academic aspect of your curriculum is not important. That's one of the misconceptions about performing arts colleges. They all have a gen ed component. They will not get accreditation as a college without a general education component. So you will always need to take an academic class. It is not going away. So there are always students who say, oh, I'm going to Juilliard, I'm going to Manhattan School of Music, so I don't need to bother with my English class. Well, that's not true, right?
Okay.
And you can make your life more difficult by thinking that way. Because there are students, despite the fact, like we hit the students with a placement exam, and we give them an essay, sometimes 12, sometimes 15 pages, that they have to read over the summer, and then they have to write an essay about. Every year, there are students who don't bother to read it, and then they get to the placement exam, they're like, oh wow, I was supposed to do that? And it's like, did you think that we sent it to you in June for no reason? I mean, so there's a kind of willful ignorance about the academic part. Like, you need that part. That part's not going away. So I feel comfortable saying that that part of your education is an important part, whether or not you go, if you're in a performing arts high school and you plan to go to a performing arts college, you still need that. Right? You still need to do that. Writing is important if you're a musician, a dancer, and writing. I mean, when you read reviews, right, of performances, when you read liner notes, there are all kinds of career opportunities for people who write well, who read closely. So all the skills that you would get in liberal arts are skills that you need in your profession, that you see around you, and yet there's this kind of denial about it. And that part is sort of fascinating to me. So if you are preparing, make sure that you don't give up on the other things besides your art, right? Think of your career holistically.
Yes. Before that we had this, in talking with you, as you recall, I did share with you that a lot of parents and students were asking questions that I categorized as sort of admissions related questions. And you were very, very direct in saying that you are not an admissions officer. Though I will say, in the course of this conversation, at least for me, you've shared a lot of tips and things that from an admissions standpoint would be very helpful to students. That being said, can you share from your vantage point as the chair of the liberal arts department, but any tips, thoughts, advice from an admissions standpoint as to what students can do to be admitted to a school like Juilliard, or for that matter, any other performing arts school?
I would say, since I don't have anything to do with admissions, I hear stories though, right? I think it's important to take the process really seriously and know that there are lots of qualified students. So you, once again, like, don't internalize it, just do your best, right? And but take every aspect of it seriously. So if you have to write an essay, sometimes essays help with scholarships, right? Or and don't be afraid if you have to submit a recording, pay attention to how it's recorded, right? So these days people take recordings instead of, like, auditioning live. Make sure that you have the right equipment. Right? Read the admissions, the application clearly. Follow the directions. Speak to somebody in the admissions office. There are lovely people in the admissions office, right? And so, and it's been my experience that most admissions offices have lovely people who are just trying to help. So, reach out, ask the questions that you have to ask, and then do the application, right? Like, just do your best on it. I don't think, I think and if you have a question, don't be afraid to ask, right? I happen to know, and this is going to sound crazy, but the people who work at Juilliard are really special, right? I'm not talking about the musician, the teachers, and the teachers in the sort of in your field. I mean, there many of them, most of them, all of them, I would say the vast majority of them are very, very lovely people. But the people who work at Juilliard, I'm trying to single out, I'm not saying anything disparaging about other people, I'm just saying, but the people who are the staff at Juilliard are particularly nice, right? The security guards are great. The admissions officers are great. There's a real family feel to Juilliard. And so there's no one's going to say something mean to you, right? No one's going to say, like, oh, don't ask that question, you should know. If you don't know, ask. If you don't get the financial aid you want, ask. Say something. If you have a little problem with something, reach out to someone at admissions and say, is there a student I can talk to? There's students who, work in admissions and help and things. Ask if you can talk to a student. Watch the videotapes. There are many, many videos about, like, a day in the life of an actor at Juilliard, the day in the life of a dancer at Juilliard. Juilliard has a robust equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, what would I call it, like, task force. I'm on that task force, right? And there's a lot of energy in the building. Our new president, Damien Wetzel, he tries really hard to make sure that everybody feels like they belong at Juilliard, and he's trying to make sure that Juilliard has the most equitable practices around. So if you feel like you need help, reach out for the help, right? So just find someone on the website and reach out to that person in the admissions office or whatever. There's a picture everywhere, so find someone whose face you like. I mean, there's room to ask questions, right? What's the only harm would be, that you don't get in, right? But still, reach out.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. So we are just about out of time. It's amazing how the time is, like, flown by. I do want to give you, maybe if you have
Sure.
30 seconds, 1 minute, any
Mhm.
closing thoughts, anything you'd like to leave with our audience, please, the floor is yours.
I would say that you know, you just have to, I mean, I hate to say like you just have to do your best, right? That sounds easy, but it's really true, right? You just have to, use what you have and try to maximize it in the college application. And at least when you're talking about performing arts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do your best, rest easy with knowing that you've done your best. And in terms of the liberal arts, don't forget to do the work if you're going to any performing arts college, right? So do the academic work too.
Right. Terrific. Excellent. Dr. Barron, you have been gracious with your time. Your comments have been fantastic.
Thank you.
On behalf of thesecrettowriting.com, I want to thank you for being with us today and for sharing your wealth of knowledge with our audience. To our audience, I want to thank you for joining us today. I appreciate your time and your interest. I ask you to come back. We have more speakers coming up. So please check our website at thesecrettowriting.com. Go to the Expanding College Opportunities Speaker Series. And not only am I inviting you to come back, but I hope that you will invite your friend, your neighbors, your colleagues, students. Tell your classmates at school about thesecrettowriting.com and our speaker series. So with that said, we are out of time, and I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening. Stay safe and take care. Good night. Thanks. Bye-bye.